Okay, so you've come to the barn, you've noticed that your horse is acting unusually, you're not sure what's going on. You're going to want to take your horse's vital signs. So that means you're going to want to take their temperature, their pulse, their heart rate, and their respiration rate. The best way to do this is to use a good equipment. So you want a good thermometer, digital one preferably, because those are much quicker. And you're going to want a stethoscope. Bear in mind, when your horse is in pain, they may be acting different to how they would normally be acting. So they may be pawing the ground, they may be trying to get down and roll, they may be thrashing their head around. So you don't want to presume that you're going to be safe doing these things by yourself. So I would always recommend haltering your horse and tying them, or having a friend hold your horse so that you can actually concentrate on these checks and make sure that you're getting accurate readings. These readings are based on a number per minute, but you don't actually need to count for the full minute. The most normal that we would do is we would actually count their respiration rate or their pulse for 15 seconds and then multiply it by 4 to get the number per minute. So Peroni is tied and I'm going to take his temperature. Now, if this isn't something that you do regularly, you need to be careful because your horse may not be expecting you to put a thermometer in their arse. You don't want to just approach the horse's bottom and put it in. You want to actually let them know you're there. So A, make sure they've seen you. He just gave me a little look out of his left eye, so he knows I'm here. Touch his body elsewhere before you go to that area. And then I actually usually would just give the point of the buttock, at the top of the buttock here, a little scratch, because that actually relaxes them, and you'll start to notice that his dock here is starting to relax and lift. That's going to make your job a lot easier. If your horse is very tense about you taking their temperature, they could potentially hold the dock tight against their flank there, and then it's going to be very difficult to take their temperature. So this just actually helps relax them a little bit. You can even touch underneath the dock. As you can see that he's quite relaxed about this. So you're gonna make sure you've got your thermometer and you've got a good hold on it, because most digital thermometers are quite small. You don't want to lose it. And keep your body to the side. Don't put your feet behind the horse. And actually you want to keep your body close to the horse, because if the horse is going to kick, it's safer to be closer to that kick so there's less impact than if you were further away. And I'm very gently just going to tickle before I insert, and then you just hold it against the edge, keeping one eye on what the horse is doing. You don't want to be putting yourself at risk. Always have some attention on what the horse is doing, making sure they're not getting too stressed, that they're not really mad about it. Try to keep yourself to one side of the horse. Good boy. And then remove. Good boy. Once you've got your temperature reading from your thermometer, you want to check that it's in the normal healthy range for a horse. For an adult horse, you're looking for it to be between 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit and 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. A horse's temperature can be greatly affected by the environment. So if it's particularly cold at the time that you're taking it, or particularly hot, it may be slightly above that. But as a rule of thumb, at a normal temperature, your horse's temperature should be between 99.5 and 101.5 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, next you want to take your horse's pulse. The best way to do this is with a stethoscope. If you're not used to using one of these, I would definitely recommend practicing. Want to make sure the earpieces are placed so that they are slightly facing forwards, like so, and make sure they're snug into your ears. And then before you use the stethoscope, you want to check the sound quality of your stethoscope. One like this, you can use both sides. This side for me actually has a slightly better sound, so I'm going to use this side to do my listening. The best place to listen to the horse's heart is on the left-hand side of their body. That's because the left-hand side of their heart is larger, so the sound is easier to hear. And you're going to listen at this point here, just behind the elbow, just behind and above the elbow on the, this is where the girth would go. So this is the best place to listen, but you have to actually just hold the stethoscope nice and close. Listen really carefully, and you may need to move it around a little bit to find an area where you can hear the heartbeat clearly. And the heartbeat itself is going to sound like two sounds. It's going to go, it's a lub-dub sound. You want to count that as one beat. So you're going to hear lub-dub 1, lub-dub 2. That's how you're going to count the heartbeat. So now that you know where the heartbeat is, you can hear a good sound. You want to get your phone or a watch and set a timer for 15 seconds. So then you're going to start the timer, count how many heartbeats you hear, and then when the timer goes off, whatever number you've got, you're going to multiply that by 4. Once you've multiplied that number by 4 to get the beats per minute, you want to check that that's in a normal range. 28 to 44 is a normal range for a healthy adult horse at rest. If a horse has just finished exercising and you're just doing this for practice, and the horse's heart rate is elevated, it's probably just because they've just been exercising. But if your horse is showing some signs of distress and their heart rate is significantly elevated, that's a key indicator that your horse is either in pain or very distressed. So that is something that you want to relay to your veterinarian. To take your horse's respiration rate, you're basically just going to do it visually by looking at their flank. So this area here, towards the back of the rib cage, is the easiest area to see when they are intaking breath and exhaling breath. An inhale and an exhale is going to be counted as one breath. This is probably more tricky than the other two because it can be a lot more subtle, especially if your horse is distressed or moving around a lot or in pain. It's quite probable that there's going to be other movements going on in this area, which can make it more difficult to tell how many breaths they're doing. But without touching the area, I mean, I usually keep one hand on the horse just so that when I'm concentrating on one area, I can feel if the horse is about to move or do something dangerous. You're just going to watch. So you can see here, especially here, you can see when he inhales and exhales. Inhales and exhales. And you're going to do the same as we did for the pulse. You're going to count that for 15 seconds and multiply by 4 to get the amount per minute, the respiratory rate per minute. A healthy adult horse should have between 8 and 16 breaths per minute. Okay, so now you've taken your horse's temperature, pulse, and respiration rate. There are a few other checks you can do to give you an idea of your horse's health before you call your veterinarian. One is to look at their mucous membranes. So you're gonna want to have a good look at their gums above their incisors, above and below, inside their mouth. So first of all, make sure that your horse is comfortable with you touching this part of their face. And then you're going to very gently lift up their lip and have a look at the color of their gums. Ready? Okay. Smile. You're looking to make sure that the gums are a healthy pink color. If the gums are especially white and pale, or if they are very, very dark red, that could be an indication of a serious problem. So you want to note that and let your veterinarian know. The other test that you can do if your horse will allow is called a capillary refill test. You're going to place your thumb or a finger on the gum, press down hard for a second or two, and then release. If the gum quickly refills its color, it'll go white from the pressure that you've put on it. If the color comes back within 1 to 2 seconds, that is a good sign. If the color takes significantly longer than that, then that is also something that you want to note. Dehydration is another factor that you might want to look at and let your veterinarian know, especially if your horse is colicking. It may be due to dehydration. So the skin pinch test is very easy to do. You're going to take a section of the neck, pinch the skin and pull, and then release. The skin should go back within 1 second of release. If the skin stays up in a little peak and goes back very, very slowly, that is a sign that your horse isn't very well hydrated. So that is something you're going to want to note. A horse's gut is supposed to be working 24/7. It should be continually moving food through their system. And if you are not hearing any sounds coming from the gut, or perhaps not from one of the quadrants, that could be an indication that there is a problem. That problem could be that for some reason your horse has not been eating, which there would probably be a reason for. Or another would be that for some reason there is an impaction or something blocking the route through the gut that is preventing food matter from moving through. So listening to the gut is a very good way of assessing how that gut is working and moving. To do that, you're going to want a stethoscope, and you're going to want to listen to 4 different quadrants in the gut. So the first one I would usually listen to is the upper left-hand quadrant. So you're going to go to sort of where the hip bone is, and then come a little across behind the last rib, and start by listening there, but you may need to move around to find a point where you can hear good, where you've got a good sound. Once you find some sounds, or you start to hear the gut, even if it's very, very faint, you're going to want to listen for at least a minute in each quadrant. That's because the gut may be working, but it may just be slowed down. And so you're not going to hear as much. But if you wait for a full minute, you actually hear some sounds. That's important information to give to your vet, because it's not that the gut is completely silent. It's just that it's not working as regularly as it would normally. So once you've listened to the left upper quadrant, you're going to move your stethoscope down about 8 inches or so and listen to the left lower quadrant. What should it sound like? It should sound like gurgling, like water flowing, like bubbles, like squelching. Those would all be considered healthy sounds. Once you've done the left-hand side, you're going to transfer to the other side and listen to that. The upper right-hand quadrant directly relates to where the cecum is. So if that's the one area you're not hearing sounds, that's quite relevant, something you want to tell your vet. And then again, listen to the right lower quadrant as well, and listen to each of those for a minute. One other area you might want to listen to is the very lowest point of the belly here. This area is good to listen to if you suspect your horse may have sand in their intestine, or potentially be having colicky symptoms because of a sand colic. The sound you're listening for, if you suspect sand or if you hear your horse has sand, it will sound like the ocean or the waves running over the sand. It's kind of a shushing sound. If you hear that kind of noise, that's an indication your horse may have some sand in their gut. One other thing that's really good to be able to check, it wouldn't be considered one of your horse's vital signs, but if you are suspecting some form of issue with their feet, potentially an abscess, maybe the beginnings of a laminitis, or your horse is just showing up lame in one of their feet, it's good to be able to check your horse's digital pulses. So basically all you're doing in that situation is you're feeling the pulse that's going to that horse's hoof. If they have an abscess or if they're starting a laminitic event, the pulse in that foot is going to be increased. So you're going to feel a stronger pulse than you would normally. The pulse in the foot is actually usually fairly weak in a healthy horse. It's only if there is increased inflammation that you're going to feel what we would call bounding pulses. The way to do this is first of all to find the pulse. Okay, so looking at your horse's leg, you can see here you've got the cannon bone at the front. This skinny bone here is the splint bone, which runs down to the horse's fetlock. Usually when you take a human's pulse, you wouldn't use your thumb because you have a pulse in your thumb. But for the purpose of this, we're actually going to use our thumb and our first finger. And you run your fingers down the groove behind the splint bone until you start to reach the puffy part of the fetlock. And you should be able to feel a faint pulse. You're going to press down with your thumb and first finger for around about 10 seconds, making sure that the horse doesn't move their hoof or leg whilst you're doing so. And then very gently, you're going to ease that pressure very slowly. And if you can feel the blood rushing back through that vein and throbbing back into the position in the foot, that is what we would call a bounding pulse. If you can feel it just starting to come back, but it's still fairly faint, then your horse probably doesn't have an inflammation-based problem in that hoof. I know. Filming is tough. Filming is tough. Filming is tough. Yes. I know, it requires lots of patience.